everyone? It's your boy 3MG. We are back with another video. Another episode of 3MG Stories, however, very different from the recent ones you guys been watching. You guys are used to like the funny, humiliating videos about my past, anything that's kind of disgusting, any nasty encounters or experiences. This one right here kind of like hits home, something that I did not expect. I suspected some more information about my past and just my family, but I didn't expect to hear this particular news. So I'm going to actually break this whole thing down. I find it very interesting. I'm not as sensitive to it. Again, I'm going to break down why, but I do want to say thank you to everyone who made it very possible for me to make it over to Puerto Rico. That was the first time I went over there to visit my family, the first time ever meeting my father's side of the family. And that's what this is more about, my dad. And, he passed when I was 3 years old. So I didn't really know anything about him, just more or less what my mom used to say. And pretty much, the woman who raised him, who used to come see me and just tell me all the good things about him. That's all I really know. What led me to want to make this video was simply because of this particular channel and my audience here. From every video I've ever made, if it's funny, you guys crack jokes with me. If it's a serious video, I've never seen you guys insult me. I've never witnessed anyone joke about any kind of serious matter that I've talked about, whether if it's about me or just someone in particular. And it was my choice to want to make this video. It's very touchy on the subject, but I'm gonna let you guys know I'm not as sensitive to it because my attachment to me and my father was never obviously strong. I never met him. I was 3 years old when he passed. But let's get right into it. So this right here is kind of where I gotta make sure I go through this and not talk around so many different stories. Let's just give you some background real quick. My dad passed when I was 3 years old. I'm 27 right now. My dad passed when I was 3. When my dad passed away, they flew him out to Puerto Rico to bury him. I do not have any memory. I have no memory of meeting that family. Therefore, me going over there, I wanted to know who were my father's brothers and sisters, my aunts, uncles from over there, and I wanted to know, do I have other people who know me? I felt like I only know one side of my family, and that's my mother's side. It's a very small side of the family because not everybody is that close like they used to be. So therefore, I've always had this weird interest of I want to know my aunts and uncles from my father's side. I only know one out over here who's very close to me in my heart, but that's not enough. I want to know everyone. I'm old enough now, and I'm going to say I do regret not going any, earlier because both my grandmothers passed from my dad's side. Confusing, right? So I'm going to get into it. My dad pretty much was adopted or taken in by the woman I call my grandmother. The woman who would come visit me from Puerto Rico since I was a baby up until I was 14, that's the woman I call my grandmother. She's the one who calls my father her son. However, she was not my father's real mom, and she was the one who raised my father since he was born. My real grandmother had given him up to her, trusted that she would always bring him back to Puerto Rico, back and forth, and always make sure that he visits. I guess my grandmother had too many kids. There's a lot of personal things that I don't want to touch on that. My father was raised by someone who wasn't his real mom, but obviously we don't really go that route. We say that's his real mom. I call her my real grandmother. That's the woman I'm attached to. That's the woman I seen growing up. So I love her to death, and it is what it is. Now, how this whole story changes, let's get away from Puerto Rico for a second. Moms, I'm going to just say this about parents. They always say things to you, and we may be a little naive to it. We might be gullible. We might be a little bit, we'll play stupid, But, whenever mom says something, we always believe it. When we're sick, when we were young, and mom's put her head on your forehead, puts a cold washcloth and says, you'll feel better. Oh, drink ginger ale, you'll feel better. Ginger ale don't do shit, But we, because mom said it, we believed it. When they make you drink tea and say the tea's going to clear up everything, I believed every single thing my mom used to say. Of course, that's my mom. And everything that I go through in life, I always think back to things she tells me. So, of course, the story behind my dad's passing was he died of lung cancer. So, remember, I was very young-minded. I lacked any kind of information, education in terms of learning how this actually happens, catching cancer from this, just a lot of the information in general. And story was my dad died from lung cancer. He smoked so much. And the fact that supposedly Jamaica Hospital, they didn't change his bag or whatnot, and he died extremely fast because of it. So that was the story growing up. What happened was, in this particular trip, I never expected to hear the actual truth of my father's passing. So we visited Puerto Rico. My girlfriend's helping me translate everything to family, and we're just having a great time. Screw the hotel we was at. We was having a great time being in the countryside of Puerto Rico, being with the family. That's where, our heart was at, with the family. So I met up with my uncle, who was like 20 years older than my father, and he's actually the son of the woman who raised my dad. The woman who is not my dad's real mom, the one I've been saying this whole time, that's her real son. But I'm going to call him my uncle because why? He helped raise my father, and he was like this with my father since my father was a baby. He was 20 years older than him. That being said, I'm going to call him Theo or Uncle. Theo or Uncle. So we get invited over his house. We both cry. He's crying seeing me because he's like, yo, you look like your father. And oh my God, you're my nephew. I don't care what anybody says. I seen your father grow up. He was a smart man. That's always been the thing. My father's a smart man. He was like this, strong. He used to think it was cool to hear stories like, yeah, your father used to fight. That he was a boxer. My father used to box a little bit. Another story, he was in and out of jail, and the fact that he was a very smart kid growing up. However, we're sitting at this table and we just eating food. Like, we're just eating like crazy. There's shrimp everywhere. I'm having a great time. We're all talking. Well, I'm trying to talk. I'm trying to reply. My girlfriend's the one who's translating everything. You know what? Before I say it, I do want to make something clear. Growing up, everything I've known about my dad, I've always told myself something. This is not a superhero movie. Stop making him out to be this amazing, innocent man, even though he went to jail. And I can understand, because anything that's been unfortunate, any kind of messed up circumstance or kind of situation that happened in the family, growing up, you don't want to have your last thoughts of this person to be something tragic, to be something that's kind of, how should I say it, not disgusting or just embarrassing. You don't want any of that last memory to be that, or that be the focus of your thoughts when you think about this person. So, but I knew that things occurred in my father's past that probably people didn't want me to know, that maybe my mom was in denial about, and therefore just kept it from me. Now back to it. We're all eating at the table. Me, my uncle who's 20 years older than my father, who helped raise my father, my real aunt, her husband, and my girlfriend, along with my other uncle's wife. Again, enjoying the conversation. Food is amazing. My uncle's saying amazing things about my dad, and he says something to my girlfriend in Spanish, and she looks at me and just goes, "Ricky, did you know your dad died of AIDS?" And that's when everything turned left. When she said that to me, I looked at her and I said, "No, he died of lung cancer." That's what my mom said. And as soon as she turned her head and looked at him, I looked at her and I was like, fuck. I said fuck because I didn't want her to see me get emotional about that. I didn't want her to see me at a weak point about it. I didn't want her to see me kind of fold up a little bit about that. So I had to play out this whole personality and make it as if it did not bother me. Soon after, obviously, I told her that it's messing with me a little bit. But as soon as that happened, I did not want to fold under pressure or get too emotional or angry, in that moment. Because what went through my mind was everything my mother told me. All the great things she said, his cause of death. And the fact that no one, even from my mom's side of the family, ever denied it. Not even my grandmother, when she would come visit me, never told me anything. So when my girlfriend looked back at my uncle and said, "No, Ricky said his mom said he died of cancer," the look on his face was as if, how can you insult me like this? This is my brother. Why would she ever say that? He died of AIDS. He had a problem with women and drugs. But I think his thing was more about women. I'll be honest. As soon as they said he died, as soon as my girlfriend said AIDS, immediately in the back of my head, it connected every freaking dot. It connected everything. And I could not be in denial anymore. I couldn't be naive. I couldn't be so empty-minded. I couldn't act like I didn't know what was going on. That right there answered every single question I've ever had in my head. And it makes too much perfect sense to ever sit here and say, no, he's lying, he doesn't know what he's talking about. So from my understanding, my father had told him, obviously he knew my father was getting into a lot of trouble. My uncle also lived in New York as well. He was back and forth. So he witnessed my father being crazy in the streets. The first thing I wanted to do was call my mom and just say, yo, so you lied to me? Because immediately I was like, Ma, you kept this shit from me. Because remember what I told you guys in the beginning? It's mom. You know, when mama says it's going to be okay, when she says, no, this is, it's fine like this. Oh, no, it's okay like that. Or don't do this because it's like that. You listen. And as much as you may not agree, it's mom. And that's the most important thing. That's that. Nothing else matters. It's mom. Mom is saying it. We can't do this because mom. Well, you know what? I'm not going to go for that no more. So she has to explain herself to me because this is something I need to know. So it went from hearing amazing things about my dad to then my uncle having to explain that my dad stole from him. My dad did a lot of stuff that, he wasn't proud of. He was a very supporting man. He brought home food. He paid bills and everything. It was just how he did it that was the problem. In and out of jail, trouble. But still in the back of my mind, AIDS. I'm going to be honest with you guys when I say this. Maybe this is shallow, selfish, self-centered, whatever the hell you want to call it. Up until like the last few years, I started fitting this description or the stereotype of a lot of people that I know that I didn't want to be a part of. And this one was it. I didn't want to have to be one of these kids growing up knowing that my dad died or something like that. I'm not mad. I'm not disgusted. I'm not embarrassed. I don't care. That's my dad. Like, I have no attachment to it. I love him just by default, but I have no attachment to him, So, like, I'm not here like, oh, my God, how could he? I understand. There's a lot of background to it. It made a lot of sense. There's a reason for it. And when he was explaining to me everything, immediately when we left, I then told my girl, hey, I kind of feel out of place. I feel a little bit weird. I feel uncomfortable. And I don't know. It just threw me for a loop. I went to Puerto Rico to visit his family, my father's side of the family. I didn't expect to hear something like that. But what's funny is my dad's side of the family all knew. So they're sitting there like they know. And I'm wondering, why the hell did I not know when my mom told me she was still keeping contact here and there with them? That they never discussed it? So I called my mom later on the day. And I said, Ma, I gotta talk to you. What's up with this? And I said, Dad died of AIDS. He never died of lung cancer. She was like, AIDS? And, my mom is another one. Very, very in denial with shit. Naive as hell. And if it ain't her way, it's the highway. Her thoughts is her thoughts, and this is her beliefs. Well, one thing she told me was that the story about my father's death was he had lung cancer. However, my dad's mom, the one who raised him, always bumped heads with my mom. And she would blame my mom for everything my dad did. However, I'm going to defend my mom on that and say, no, my dad was kind of reckless since he was like 16 from the stories that I've heard. My mom met him way after that. And pretty much my dad was running around in the street with women and doing drugs. So when my mom is telling me on the phone that my dad was doing drugs, you know, and he started losing a lot of weight towards the end, you know, since when I turned 3, that he just started losing so much weight. And when we moved to this apartment building like a couple blocks away, he was only there for a few months and he passed. So I said, you need to break down everything. And I asked her very personal questions. So I said, hey, listen, why, how can you not know that? You was in the hospital with him as he was dying. What's up? And she said, your grandmother, the woman who raised him, wasn't allowing my mom to come in all the time, or at least the doctors were not allowed to tell my mom everything. She was the one telling my mom. And again, I can understand because my mom and dad was not married. Legally, your legal guardian can know all the information, but your legal guardian also has the power to tell the doctor, don't tell this person anything. That's not their business. Even if that's his girlfriend, that doesn't matter. So I believe my grandmother, because my mom said they always bumped heads because she was Jehovah's Witness, my dad's mom, the one who raised them, and she forced my dad into that. She was more religious about it. Therefore, and back in the 80s and 90s, you could change the cause of death on paper. No one wanted to have a family member who died of AIDS. It wasn't something, you know, hearing about GRID, HIV, or AIDS, you was looked at like, oh my God, was it because of a same-sex situation? Was it because of this and that? Like, it wasn't a thing until now where we know people could live for years with it. It's not a thing where people are discriminated now, you know, over it, because back then you was looked at a certain way. I can understand why, if my grandmother paid money to get the cause of death changed, and why she told she told my mom a different, you know, reason why he's there. So it makes a lot of sense. And the doctors and nurses never spoke to my mom about, you know, the reason. So they kept their mouth shut. He died relatively quickly, very fast. And the questions I had for my mom was, how are we still here? How am I alive? And Mom, how the hell are you alive? Because I'm going to be honest with you, isn't anything transmitted? You know, I work in a hospital, so I'm not stupid. And she told me some things, and she was like, you know, I think your dad, out of all people that he's met, he didn't want to hurt me in that way. So they just kept it clean with each other. Not in, as far as information goes, just they never engaged in anything else when my mom was pregnant with me. And plus, my dad was in and out of jail. Obviously, when my dad came out of jail, I had just been born. Means how the fuck in 3 years, and they were still together. How the hell did you not catch anything? And that was just more or less like, I loved your dad for who he was, and I guess he didn't want to hurt me in any of the sense. I mean, it doesn't make it any better, right? My dad was out here getting busy doing what he was doing, drugs and women, but I guess he didn't want to hurt my mom and give her anything, and obviously hurt me as a baby. So he kind of stood away from doing anything personal like that with my mom. I told my mom, like, and you still with him? Like, that's crazy. Like, you're a woman. Like, you still with him? She was just like, yo, I was raising your older brother. And my brother's 8 years older than me. She's like, I was raising your older brother and you. Like, I was so focused on you guys. I'm young and I'm trying to get my life together. I said, I understand. But I said, Mom, how can you be so naive? How can you be so, like, empty-minded? Was you just in denial? How would you not know that he had something? Like, you just, like, missed all the red flags. Ma, he got sick. You seen how skinny he got. Did you go with him to his appointments? Did they say anything? Like, what was going on? And normally back then, and back in the days, people, I forgot what it's called. They just said it in my job, but it's like these black spots. But I guess he didn't have that. I don't know. And I guess it wasn't something that they could recognize. So he died that fast. And I just told my mom, like, yo, what the hell, Ma? How can you be so, like, blind to that? He didn't want to do anything. He didn't want to hurt you in any sense. How could you not think anything like that? You know, just because your focus was something about raising us 2 kids, how can you just not know that something was going on, you know? And, you know, I can't force her to give me a response. That's her reason, her business. But I'm just like, Ma, you ran with this idea that he died of lung cancer. She was like, yo, I have the papers. I have everything. It says it. But I work in a hospital, and a lot of information that I've looked up, people were paying to change the cause of death back in the days if it happened that you died of AIDS. Because nobody wanted that under a cause of death sheet. That was like an embarrassment or something crazy. Oh, my God, get away from me. And my mom was just confused because she said, how can he have died of... My mom was even confused. And she was like, how could he have died of AIDS if we had an open casket? And back in the 90s, 80s and whatever, if you had died of AIDS and you had a funeral, they made you close the casket. Just some background information. When it was first founded of AIDS, or HIV GRID that they called it, they felt like it was content, like you can catch it just by fucking breathing the same air. So they didn't want to have open caskets for funerals. So I guess because the woman who raised my dad kind of lied about everything, they did an open casket on my father. So like I guess the story was like, oh, he died of cancer, whatever. But come to find out, no. And it makes a lot of sense. I told my brother about it. He was a little bit like, nah, man, it had to be drugs, not women. I'm just like, man, come on, man. It doesn't make it any better. Women are not. And it is fucking crazy to me because growing up, all I used to hear was like, you look like your dad is so handsome. Your father was a ladies' man. Pretty Ricky, Slick Rick, or this, that. Like, all these jokes. And just seeing he was jacked up and everything. And just knowing, like, all these nicknames they gave my dad, like, oh shit, it makes sense. One thing that confuses me is my uncle that lives here. He never told me. And he kept that from me too. And I believe he knows the truth. I'm not stupid. So again, hopefully I put the story together. There's a lot of missing pieces, but that's just because it goes beyond getting personal. But just when I found that out, I wanted to learn more about why did he get like that. And my family told me, and my mom also told me, him being Jehovah's Witness, and that's not an excuse, but again, his lifestyle was very different from his siblings because the woman took him in and the rest stood with the real mom. And he wasn't allowed to go anywhere, wasn't allowed to have a girlfriend at a certain age. Was forced to only be in school and be home. Therefore, of course, his grades are going to be good. He was locked up in his own house. And I can understand because I see it happen to people all the time when you have strict parents. Only time will tell until they're not able to go out and experience it for themselves and make their mistakes at a young age. Kids end up sneaking out. Kids end up experiencing drugs and they get caught up in the most worst ways. And you look back at the parents like, damn, why didn't you give them that freedom to kind of mess up a little bit instead of letting them do it on their own behind your back to the point where they cause so much harm to themselves and their lives. So I think it kind of went crazy because also my grandfather was kind of thing with women too. So he introduced that to my dad, and my dad kind of went crazy when he was finally able, like around 15, 16 during the 70s or 80s or whatever. You was able to do whatever you wanted to do. You can smoke at like fucking 12 years old. You could buy a pack of cigarettes at like 12 years old when you was at that time. So when you 15, it's almost like the new 18. You was out on your own doing what you got to do. So hearing the stories about him doing drugs and meeting up with his friends in Brooklyn to shoot up and just do all these crazy things that I was just like, what the fuck? I don't want that image of my dad to be in my mind. I look at, even though I got jail pictures of my dad, but I got pictures of him holding me. Pictures of him kissing my mom. Pictures of him kissing, me and my mom together. Pictures of him and my older brother. Me and my brother got different fathers, but 8 years apart. But just seeing that kind of like threw me off. And just to throw some more information, I found out that it is true. I do have another brother too, and he's older than me, from my father's side. So like obviously he had him way before he met my mom, and my mom also confirmed it that she seen him, and he was 10 years old when she met him. So obviously my dad had a kid young, and he's way older than me. No, she said she met him at like a certain age and up until he was 10. But that, we don't know. I don't know where he's at. I just know his name was Justin. I don't know his last name, ain't my last name. I can't find him to save my life. So again, I'm not too sensitive like I cry about. No, of course not. Does it put me like in a position where I start to think like, damn, why me? Yeah. Shit happens to everybody. Life happens, It was something that just threw me so left field. Because of course I wanted to learn more about my dad. But that's not something I wanted to learn, y'all. Like, y'all seen the beginning of the video. We went to the cemetery. But I was told by so many subs, like, make that personal. Don't really show much. And, I promised you guys I wasn't going to do that. Oh, no. I trusted my gut on this one to make this video and put this video out. I wanted to just share with you all. There's a lot. It's funny. I wanted to tell a story about the whole family tree and everything. But now I wanted to make this one specifically, for you guys and to the point. I didn't want to babble too much and get out of place. Just, having to understand this and know my background and just know my family was super loving, caring, supportive when I was there, and just they're incredible. I want to go back over there so bad. I wish I can just snap my fingers and get the money to take another plane out there, like I missed them already. It was good to see how close everyone was and how the country is over there. I call it a country still. And even though what was said about my dad, it wasn't said in a way that they were like in embarrassment. No, they love my dad. You know, they always speak about him, and the fact that all my uncles, they all have like similar resemblances of each other, and they look like my dad a little bit. It was cool, man. My cousin met him for the first time. Met cousins, you know, I got a bunch of cousins, but it was amazing, man. I missed him so much. So, just again, God bless each and every one of you. Thank you guys for watching this story. But yeah, I got 2 more vlog videos coming out with me and my girlfriend, so stay tuned for that. Sorry if it's taking kind of long, but the editing, I'm trying to be on point with it. But yeah, it's your boy 3MG. God bless everyone, and I'm out. Deuces.
I've been living off delusion, cause I heard it's healthy. Pockets growing, labels talking, hoes been far from stealthy. I'm still slightly flying under radars. I practice like it's playoffs. I lay a brick a day, I'm out here trying to build the great wall of yours truly. I need more groupies and less people trying to get a cut. Put your fucking hands back in your pockets.